treatment, they've left. They're taking their meds, they've stopped. And so it's interesting that, business sort of mirrors the recovery process. But so while I'm dealing with our emotional roller coaster, I'm having to help the families go through theirs and explaining to them, listen, you know, there's going to be some ups and downs here. We're along the journey with you, but understand how this works, right? It's not a magic pill. It takes a little time to get somebody in recovery and keep them there long enough. And so that's a journey we take with our clients. Most of them that stick it out get a great result. The ones that don't, unfortunately, they don't get the result they'd hoped for, because there's no magic involved in doing this work. It just isn't. It's a journey.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Mark Astor. How are you doing today, Mark?
I am good, Jeremy, and it is great to see you, and thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast.
I really appreciate having you join me today. It's always exciting to get to talk to new people, and we had a quick little pre-interview, but it's always nice to just really get into a conversation.
Yeah, it's good to see you. It's good to see you, and I've enjoyed getting to know you on a personal level, so thank you for that.
I appreciate it. I always like to kick off the show and talk about the importance of networking. How do we know each other?
So we met through, I guess, Olivia Atkins, who is a mutual contact for us. Olivia is a wonderful lady who helps people like me to get onto podcast shows and helps us to share our mission, which really at the end of the day is how you grow a business, but it's also how you help a bunch of people. Because if nobody knows you're out there, it's really hard to help anybody. And I know that, that's what you're doing and it's what I'm doing. And this is really about, trying to make a little dent in the universe so that when, at some point when you leave the planet, people say, oh, you know what? That guy made a difference in whatever it happens to be. So that's the goal here.
Mark, I couldn't agree more. And Olivia does such a great job finding guests that have great messages, great stories. And whenever she says it, usually I'm just like, I'm excited to see who she sends my way each time.
Yeah, she's fabulous. So thank you, Olivia.
So I want to know that comic book issue #1, that origin story. Who's Mark?
Who's Mark? So Mark is a lawyer based in Palm Beach County, Florida, who back in February 2016 was flat broke, had no money, but had a mission and an idea and the concept to build a law firm that was going to help people with substance use and mental health issues. So February 16, I sat myself down in the library here in Boca, where I live. They had, there was a little, attached to the library was a great little cafe, and they had great coffee, reasonably priced, and free Wi-Fi. That was a good place to start a law firm. And that's exactly what I did. Sat down, created a spreadsheet of, a bunch of people that I knew. I hadn't really lived much in Florida over the past 4 years, hadn't practiced in a number of years. And I smiled and dialed, and I made coffee arrangements and lunch dates and went around to treatment centers with the cheap cards that I had printed at Vistaprint and said, hey, I'm here to help people. And, it grew, but it took a little time. It took me over a year to really get my first, the first case that really fit my mission. And along the way, I took, different types of cases because I didn't have any money. And 11 months in, I lost my dad. So I had to take care of my mom. And, those were difficult times. I had just barely enough money to pay for my dad's funeral. And, but I hustled, and we're now going into year 10. And I have a team of 10 people, and we help people from all over the country. And I'm really blessed. But having a mission and finding a bunch of people that you can help is, for me, has been key and critical to my success, both personally and professionally.
Mark, what got you into wanting to practice law to begin with?
Well, so I come from reasonably humble beginnings, Jeremy. My father left school at 14 and my mother 16. I grew up in England. And, my father came from even more humble, background. My grandfather on my mother's side was a barber, and my father on my grandfather on my father's side was a tailor. And so, my father learned at an early age that, if you wanted to enjoy the fruits of your labor, you had to go out there and hustle. And that's what he did. And my father, for most of his adult life, built businesses. And along the way, he had some success. He also had some failures. And I learned, I mean, I was going to work with him, or, I always had a summer job or a Saturday weekend job since I could walk. So I've always been a hustler. I mean, between college and law school, I worked as a valet for 9 months. I actually made more as a valet than I think I did the first 2 years out of law school when I was a government lawyer. So I learned to be, I was surrounded by an entrepreneurial father. So at around, got about 11 years ago, I met somebody that completely changed the direction of my life. So I met a gentleman called Arjon Robbins, who runs a company down in Miami called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. They teach lawyers how to run the business side of being a lawyer. In other words, they work with entrepreneurial lawyers, because this is not a skill set they teach us in law school. And that's why a lot of lawyers, contrary to popular belief, really struggle to make a living. It looks, you see these guys on TV, they're making millions of dollars, and perhaps they are, but they're few and far between. They say the average lawyer makes between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. So, it's not all, roses and all that other fun stuff. So, I saw Arjon Robbins speak at a breakfast meeting about 2 hours south of where I lived. He spoke to a 25 lawyers about the idea of building a law firm that really is a business. And they all looked at him like he had three heads. I looked at him and said, this is the guy I got to go work for. And I begged him for a job. And after interviewing a couple of times, he hired me. And I spent a year there watching him not only grow his business, but helping other law firms grow their businesses. But what is key and critical about that year is that how to manage a small law firm really is, at their very core, their foundation, is that they're a personal growth company for lawyers. And their philosophy is that personal growth has to precede financial growth, right? And for me, that was a year where I needed to grow up, right? I'd never really taken responsibility for my life. And so after a year there, I said, okay, it's time. I'm going to go and open up my own law firm. And I sat down with Arjon Robbins. He said, okay, I'll help you. Who do you want to help? I said, I know this is weird, but I've been surrounded by people, for a lot of my adult life who have mental health issues, drug issues. That's who I'm going to help. And he said, well, what's your plan? I said, I don't know. I'm just going to go do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I had a background in criminal law because I'd been a prosecutor and a defense lawyer. So I figured I'll take criminal cases. But I also read about the Marchman Act, which is a statute that is unique to Florida. There is really nothing else quite like it anywhere else in the country. And it is a statute that allows us to put somebody into treatment for periods of up to 90 days that can get repeated, where there is a primary substance use. In other words, there's alcohol, drugs, prescription medications, and it allows us to involuntarily commit them, put them into treatment for up to 3 months at a time. And it also allows, based on the circumstances, for us, if we need to get an emergency order, to have the police go pick them up, get them off the streets, and get them to a place of safety, and then we can get back in front of a judge. And so at the time, there was only two lawyers who were doing Marchman Act work. One was north of me, and he also did divorce work, and one was south of me, and he sued nursing homes. And the guy up north didn't go south, the guy down south didn't go north, and they kept it like this little secret because they were both making boatloads of dough off of this, and nobody else had even heard about it. Well, I went and started blabbing about it on social media because I said, people need to know about this because we could help. We could save just a ton of people. Well, the guy down south didn't take kindly to that, and he went and registered the fictitious name to my website and started to send me threatening emails. Well, as my wife will attest, I'm just not the kind of guy that walks away from a fight. And I said, if you've got it, bring it. F you. And that was it. He backed down, and I just kept building my business. And, the guy up north, I've become friendly with because there's so many people that need help. I mean, it's not like I can help everybody. I just can't. So the guy up north, I still have a great relationship with. The guy down south, him and I have done battle in the courtroom a number of times. It's become personal because he's just that kind of guy. And that's just the way it is. But, for the first year, it was just me doing, everything, marketing the business, doing the legal work. And I was taking other kinds of cases, family law cases, criminal cases, anything to pay the bills. And the second year I met my now wife. We've been married about 15 months, but we've been on and off together 6 or 7 years. I could do a whole podcast on just that. But she had a background in guardianship work. My wife lived up in Massachusetts, prior life with a prior husband. She had her children up there. When she got divorced, she came down here. But what we discovered was that we could use the guardianship statute, which every state has one. It's really intended for elderly people, but we have been using it for our clients where there's significant mental illness and where we really need broad control. And she's really the architect of that. My wife is, I mean, she's just brilliant and that's being modest. She's just an unbelievable lawyer. And so we do a ton of guardianship work only with, not for elderly people, but only for the kinds of clients that we work with. And, that first year I made a little bit of money, but trust me, going from zero, I felt like I'd won the lottery. I actually had enough to take a girl out on a date, not to a fancy restaurant, but I had enough to take somebody out on a date. And I ended up living with my mom for 3 years because my father passed 11 months in. So he never got to see any of this, which makes me very sad. I think about him every day, but we're helping a lot of people and we're handling cases all over the state. And yeah, I'm a very blessed guy. Finding a mission helped me to build a business. So we're helping people. I met my wife. I have 2 amazing stepchildren. I mean, I might be the luckiest guy on the planet. I really feel like that. Maybe I'm not, but I feel like it. So I'm very blessed. And the fact I can come on, you and I can sit here and I can share my mission. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to have a steak dinner after this, but other than that, it doesn't get any better than sitting with you talking about this, Jeremy.
Mark, I appreciate it. I want to know what made you not give up. What made you, because as you mentioned, you're starting a conference, you're starting a law firm inside a library, basically, while shortly inside you're moving in with your mother and, you're trying to make it work. What made you keep going?
It's interesting. If you ever seen, I don't know if you've ever seen Rocky 4. There's a line in Rocky 4 where Rocky is talking to his son and the son is saying, don't take the fight, don't take the fight. And I never forget this. There's a scene where Rocky says to his son, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Because at some point, everybody, I don't care who you are, you're going to end up on your butt, either physically or financially. At some point, you end up on your butt. And I told my stepson, there's only 3 ways to get money. You earn it, you steal it, or somehow it's given to you. You win the lottery, you had a trust fund, whatever it happens to be. Well, I don't have a trust fund. I don't want to go to jail, so I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and just hustle and earn it. And I think having an entrepreneurial father who came from nothing and built businesses and was successful, which gave us, compared to the kids in Boca, I don't know if it was a great life, but it was a great life, right? We felt like we were lucky kids, and we were. I think motivation is an internal thing, and I said this to my stepson: you either have that desire to fight and get up and get on with your life, or you don't, and you just sit. And some people just can't get off their ass; they just want to sit there and cry about it. That's not me. That's not the way I'm wired. And so I had an elderly mother. I had no money. I needed to take care of her. My siblings kicked in where they could, but I had to step up to the plate, and that's what motivated me. And my wife and I have goals and things we like to do. We want to travel. Well, that costs money. Last December we took the kids out to Utah skiing, 6 of us. That was a trip I couldn't have afforded to take probably 18 months ago. So we saved for it. I mean, we literally spent 6 months saving for that. We paid a little bit. We put a down payment on the condo we were renting. We put a little down payment here, and we just saved and saved and saved. And then when the money was due, we had the dough. So, but by going out and helping more people, we able to make more money, which meant we could hire more staff. So, I think 2 of our staff are single moms, so they got to take care of their kids. And so we've given them the ability to take care of their children, and, they help us to run the business. And so I can spend time with somebody like you, and hopefully somebody, hears what we're talking about, and I can help them. And so it's very cyclical, but this is what it's about, right? It's about getting up every day, finding people to help, and doing the best you can to live your best life. And I'm sure at some point something will put me back on my butt again. And it's about getting up and fighting back, right? Because that's life, and that's what it's all about. You're either going to get up off your ass and make it happen and help people, or you're not. And it's really a very personal choice. But as long as you take 100% responsibility for your decisions, that's something I learned from R. John Robbins. If you take 100% responsibility, then it's okay. You're good, right? If you don't own it, then don't complain about it when you don't have it. That's my philosophy. So,
Mark, I couldn't agree more. I think one of those things, I think adversity, whether it's growing up in humble beginnings or just having things not work out, I think the first time things like that happen, it's terrifying, understandably, especially when you're launching a business or anything like that. But I think the more adversity you face without being, I mean, the only way you're done is when you're completely out of business, and even then you can pivot and find something new. But I think so much of that adversity is kind of like a roller coaster. You go up, you feel it, and like you're going down a roller coaster, you feel it in the pit of your stomach. You're like, I don't know how I'm going to make rent. I don't know how this is going to work out. You go down and you end up okay. And I think so much of that in business and life is how you handle and react to that adversity.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got a podcast, right? I'm sure the first time you had a guest on, you didn't have, a bunch of people listening. It takes time, right? You have to grow it. And it's all about the hustle. And, you know, you spent a whole day working and now you're doing a podcast and it's close to 7 o'clock at night. Some people are sitting in front of the TV already. I mean, I will at some point, but I'll probably have a little bit of work to do. And, that's what it's about. I stopped working 7 days a week about 3 months ago because physically I was starting to deteriorate rapidly. And my doctor told me to slow down. But it's hard for me when the phone rings at night, 9, 10 o'clock. It's hard for me not to call back, right? I now have a team that runs my sales department, and they call back in the morning. And my wife's like, "Listen, you're not taking that call at 11 o'clock at night. You got to get more sleep." And so it's been hard to let go because it's sort of been the way I've been operating for 9 years. But at some point you got to take care of yourself. But when you've got bills to pay and no money to pay them, you say, you know what, I got the rest of my life to sleep. I got to, if it's 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night, I'll take the call. And there were plenty of nights I worked till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock to get a case filed because I needed to be ready to go the next day, to bring in more business. And that's just the way I did it. There's just no other way. That's it. That's life.
Mark, I completely agree. And I think so much of it is season. There's seasons, obviously, outside. I live in Wisconsin. There's 4 seasons. They're very distinct.
Hmm.
But I think part of that is the seasons in life. Sometimes you're going to have to put your head down and just grind for months, maybe sometimes years on end. And there's other times where, you start to maybe see the fruits of your labor, or maybe having people can assist things that I wouldn't say they're not important because they are. It's how a business works, but things you can focus your attention on other than just that specific issue or problem. And I think it's so important to find those people that kind of have a shared vision that you do.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, sometimes people don't see they don't see the work that it took, right? They're like, oh, he's successful. Yeah, okay, but you didn't see what I did for the last 9 years, almost killing myself to get this thing going, right? It's like pushing a boulder up of a mountain. I mean, you got to push really hard before this thing starts to pick up a little bit of steam. And occasionally it's going to roll back down again, and you might have to go back to ground zero. I mean, last year, I changed almost my entire team. There's only one member of staff this year who was with us last year. We had to fire everybody. They just weren't doing their job. They weren't taking care of the clients, right? These people that come to us, we're the last port of call for them to save a loved one, and I take that responsibility really seriously. And if my team doesn't pull their weight, I got to let them go. And so I fired 2 people last week who weren't doing their job. Listen, we are in the business of saving families. Excuse my French, but you can't fuck around with stuff like that. That's a serious responsibility. Someone has come to me and said, "Hey, Mark, I want you and your team to take care to save the person who's most important in my life, my child." And if my staff don't take that seriously, then they need to get another job. I won't put up with that stuff because by helping other families, I've helped mine. And that's the way it has to be. And if you want to help your family, then help me to help others. And that's the way it is. So, sometimes you have to do the hustle, you have to deal with that hustle and that hassle. If one of my lawyers leaves, I got to jump back into handling their cases. Okay, that's what I got to do. Can't tell the client, sorry, don't have anybody to help you. No, I jump back in. I do what I need to do. I take sales calls when I need to. That's it. That's the way it's done. And it has to be. That's the key to success.
Doing the things even when it's not the glamorous or things you thought you were done with. It's, I think, especially when it's your business and your creation, and a lot of people, especially in what you're doing, depend on you, whether they know you personally or not. They just know that they need this done, and you need to be the one to, meet them where they're at.
Yep. So that's what we do, and we're helping a lot of people, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad to be able to share the mission with you.
On everyone's journey, you make a decision not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time where you just went for it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So last year, God, it was about 6 months ago. It was a Sunday morning, and I had an associate who was working for us, and I don't know, somebody whispered in his ear and said, "Hey, you should be getting paid 50% more than you are." He came to me and said he wanted a 50% rise. I said, "Great. Here's a game plan. I mapped it out for him. Here's how you can make more money. I'm happy to help you. If you help me to help more people, you should get rewarded for that." And he didn't, I think his philosophy was he was just entitled to the extra money because, well, he's entitled to the extra money. And I said, "I'm really sorry. That just isn't going to work for me. I don't take a 50% raise unless I grow the business. So I can't, you have to help. You have to help me to help more people, then I can give you the money." And at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, sent me an email telling me he was quitting, effective immediately. Well, that Monday, we had a bunch of cases, set for hearings, right? Cases that I hadn't been involved in because he'd been involved in. So, I had to throw myself back into it. I mean, what was I going to do? Cry about it? I mean, no. I mean, I went back to work on Monday morning. Sunday night, we sat up late. Okay, what cases need to be handled? What cases have hearings coming up in the next week or two? And we call those clients. Hey, your case is going to be handled by Mark. Most of the clients were thrilled because they got me. So I jumped back in, and we didn't have another associate and for about a month. So for a month, I was back in, doing legal work, going to court, taking care of the other responsibilities I already had on my plate. And I tell you, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of hair up there, but what was left, I really felt like ripping out, though that was that month there were dark times, and thank God I had my wife to G me up and, kick me in the butt when I needed it. Right. And pat me on the back when I needed that too. But that was a really stressful time, and it put a lot of pressure on the business. I also had an issue with a marketing guy who was taking me to the cleaners and went wild with my credit card. And I had to, I'm still dealing with the fallout from that and paying that off. This is being in business. But there's no point in crying about it. Just get on with it. And my father would, could hear my father's voice in my head. Hey, listen, this is business. Shit happens. Deal with it, get through it, and move on. And get it and just deal with it. You cannot ignore this because it's going to be there. So we dealt with it. We went back to work, dealt with the clients, got them great results. My new associate, Corey, jumped in, and he did we trained him. He did a bang up job. My second associate, Kristen, started 2 weeks ago. She's rocking and rolling. I was in court with her this morning, just, giving her the lay of the land. This is how we do it, helping her to deal with some issues in the case, got the client a great result, and we move forward. And as we sit here right now, she's working on a pleading, reviewing. It's almost 7, and she's reviewing this pleading. We're going to file this case tonight. Why? Because somebody reached out to me and said they needed my help at 3 o'clock. Okay, I said, great. Let's file. I want to file a case for you tonight. My staff are working late. I'm going to pay them overtime to do it because they have lives too. And we will get this case filed tonight, and we'll get a great result, hopefully the next day or two, for this client. That's the way it's done. That's it. So, it's interesting. Here's the deal. Saying business is a bit like, it's like the stock market, right? It goes up and down, right? But it trends upwards, but there's ups and downs. That's what recovery is like, right? When I'm dealing with a family who's got a loved one who's got a serious behavioral health issue, their recovery is like this. It trends upwards if you get them into treatment, but they have good days and then they're bad, good days and bad, right? They're in treatment, they've left. They're taking their meds, they've stopped. And so it's interesting that, business sort of mirrors the recovery process. But so while I'm dealing with our emotional roller coaster, I'm having to help the families go through theirs and explaining to them, listen, there's going to be some ups and downs here. We're along the journey with you, but understand how this works, right? It's not a magic pill. It takes a little time to get somebody in recovery and keep them there long enough. And so that's a journey we take with our clients. Most of them that stick it out get a great result. The ones that don't, unfortunately, they don't get the result they'd hoped for because there's no magic involved in doing this work. It just isn't. It's a journey.
Now, speaking of journeys, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown. What are you guys working on?
What am I working on?
Yeah, what are you working on?
Man, I think one of the things I'm always figuring out is how do we help more people? So actually, ironically, about an hour before we came on, I was talking to somebody about doing some, hiring somebody to do some IT work for us. Because now, I'm hearing horror stories of law firms getting hacked. Somebody sends one of these phishing emails, or somehow they get into the system. They take all your client files. They get into your trust account. So for me, because we have so many, we've helped so many people, and we have so much going on, I got to make sure I protect all this stuff, because clients come to us, their work is attorney-client privileged, and out the nature of our filings, a lot of them have to do with medical stuff, right? There's behavioral health issues which are considered part of someone's medical file. So I have a double, I have this double privilege going on. I got to make sure stuff is protected. So we're going to invest some of the money, right? We're all, look, my wife and I, when it comes to paying ourselves, we take out what we need. And I do it this way. I take a third for Uncle Sam. I take a third to pay my bills, and a third that I put back in the business to invest in it. So, I take what I need, and the rest we put back in the business. So I'm going to invest in some IT, hire somebody to take care of that, make sure our files are secure, clients' information is protected. And there's always something that needs to be worked on, right? Before I came on, I made a video. So one of the things that's important to me is to make sure that people get the information they need, right? And they shouldn't have to pay for it. So, every day I make a video, and it's about a real case, a real scenario, something, maybe I've had a conversation with somebody during the day. They've asked me a question. And so I'll do a video, and it goes out on all my social media platforms so people can get the information they need, because they can do a Google search. They can read about Marchman Act on Google, right? Most of it's probably going to be wrong because they just changed the statute, but they can get the information they need. Well, how does it work in Palm Beach County where I live? Is that any different from, say, filing the case up in Duval County, which is in Jacksonville, 7 and 8 hours north of me? Does that make a difference? Does the law operate differently up there? Well, on paper it doesn't, but in real life it does. And you need to know that, because if you're in Duval County, you're probably going to get a very different outcome than if you are in Palm Beach County, right? Every county handles these cases a little bit differently. Well, if you're a lawyer who's never handled one of these cases, and I'm not poo-pooing anybody else, by the way, you wouldn't know that, right? That only comes from experience and, doing a case and finding out it's not going as well as you wanted to, and adjusting and adapting to the way you handle these cases. But so I put a video out almost every single day, and I give that information away for free so that people can get the information they need. And based on what I give out, if they decide they want to talk to us about their legal options, great. You can have a free chat with Brittany or Rachel for as long as you need. And if you want to talk to me, we can book you a consult, or whoever, one of the lawyers. But I'm really really feel strongly people need the information so they can make the decision that's best for their family, and they should not have to pay me or any other lawyer to get it. So it's out there. I do it every single day. And it's funny, my mom always says I should be in a shirt and tie. Half the time I'm in a baseball cap because I just get out of the gym or whatever. But listen, it's real. I don't script it. I don't even bother to listen to it after the fact. I'm like, here's what you need to know. Have fun. Got any questions? Call me. Post a comment. So it's all out there, and I do it. It's important to me. People need help.
Absolutely, Mark. So where can people find you on social media and your website? Where can they get a hold of you?
Well, so our main site is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. That's mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. And the other site is bakeractattorneys.com, bakeractattorneys.com. The Baker Act is a statute here in Florida, and I think pretty much every state has a version of that allows the state of Florida to take custody of somebody when there's an allegation of a mental health crisis. And the problem is you get sucked into Florida's mental health system, and it can be really difficult to get out. And I know that because 2 days after I lost my dad, I had a family member who got sucked into Florida's mental health system. And during COVID, lots of people were getting sucked into Florida's mental health system, and it's draconian and broken. And it's very easy to get stuck there and not, get any due process rights, not be able to see a judge or get a lawyer. And so it's become a bit of a mission of mine to get people out of the broken system down here. So either one of those websites, you will find us, or just Google me. I'm all over Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Vimeo. All the videos are all out there. So if you can't find me, I don't know what to tell you. I'm around. I'm not going anywhere. You'll find me in Boca. I'm easy to find. So,
Mark, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciated learning from you and getting to know you even more.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And I love the fact you're in the Midwest, because I think we talked beforehand that I did my undergrad up in Michigan. And man, Midwest people are salt of the earth. I just don't miss the winters up there.
I don't blame you there. I don't blame you there. We'll talk soon.
We'll talk soon. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Thank you. That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.